summer up to 5 feet. So when you say 5 feet, so if you went down to the harbor this past summer, when we had that little tropical storm blow through, we were right around 4.5 feet rolling through the harbor. So that dock is meant to stay stable and not move, but break that wave action. So on the outside of that, there's about 650 feet. We're going to keep about 100 feet of that carved out for the fast ferry that comes from Providence to Newport. The rest of it's going to be open for those bigger boats that, 100-foot yacht takes my whole transient dock that we have now. They like coming up here out of Newport. People love coming up to Bristol, laying over for a couple of days between charters. So they'll be able to tie up on the outside. We had discussed, I don't know why I go too deep into it, but we had discussed doing some short-term weekly 2-week rental rates for Bristol residents to come over. If they got a week vacation in the summer, the town administrator and I have been talking about, I think I mentioned to you, Chairman, of giving them a cheaper rate, use the dock for a week or two. All of that transit stuff doesn't count towards our parking space requirement. So the CRMC and DM and the Army Corps of Engineers, they've all been really good to work with, and we're getting ready to move on that project. So
what questions do we have? If I may ask everyone, because of limited camera, if you could just say your name, just so everyone knows online, if they can't see you.
Tim Sweeney, Greg, thank you for your hard work. I have a question in regards to the software and licenses. There's a slight bump there, and I was just curious if you could just explain the additional software and the dock and piling repairs. There's a bump there. So if you just give us a little bit more detail on that. And I noticed a little bit of a bump on the salary. If you could just talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
the software and licenses, we use this program called Docwa. It's a Newport-based and owned company that handles all our reservations and all our marketing for the harbor. We were taking that out of operations and elsewhere in the past. The finance director and I had a conversation about it. We moved it into that software and licensing requirement.
Was budgeted last year. In fact, when you had recently asked about those line items that were overspent,
Yep.
you might have remembered that was one of them because there just wasn't enough budgeted for that annual DACLA license. But the DACLA program is, I don't know if you're familiar with it, it is really nice and also provides some advertising to promote the local businesses.
Yeah, so when you make a reservation through DACWA, you get an email right away back from us saying, hey, we look forward to seeing you. And then a couple of days before your reservation comes, we update it weekly with different events, different things going in town. Any business could call down to the office and say, hey, we're running a 2-for-1 dinner, or it's Newport Restaurant Week, and we're offering this for that. So we can push that on emails. The day of your reservation, you get another email from the harbor master's office saying, hey, we look forward to seeing you today. Give us a call on channel 16 or the phone number, and and here's what's going on in Bristol. And then at the end of it, then you get a nice thank you email from us. But they also push out, like if the surrounding communities are full, they say, hey, have you been to Bristol? Check out the Bristol Harbor Master. And the rest of our port partners, Air Shop, Bristol Marine, and the Yacht Club, we all are on this system. So everybody bounces and helps each other out. So it's a good networking tool as well as a advertisement for the harbor.
Greg, as far as the software, as far as the fuel station goes and how we're processing transactions, they're going to be cashless, I'm assuming, where you use your credit card. Or have you purchased the software? Do you know what software? What system are you going?
I've been looking at a lot of different ones. The most economical one, and I haven't talked to the treasurer about it yet, is the Square. It looks like a tablet, and you can either tap your phone next to it, put your card in it, and you can run it off either a smartphone or the tablet thing. So we could probably set the whole Maritime Center up, because right now we don't have a cash register down there. So we could probably do both ways and have that over there. It's all mobile too, so we don't have to leave anything in the booth overnight for security. If anybody knows anything better,
We may receive more information, as Greg said earlier, we're going out to bid, so we might get some more ideas from the firms that are bidding on the fuel pier. And there might be some software that comes with that, with the installation, so we'll know a little bit more. About the stuff.
It'd be great to reconcile the amount of fuel
Absolutely.
we're purchasing to the amount of transactions to really see how we're doing it, and if we're into cash,
Yeah, we try and avoid cash as much as possible.
Yeah.
then.
It usually, you might see a little bit of cash when you're buying fuel, and that's generally from the fishermen will only take a few gallons on just to fill the boat up. But we'll catch all that in receipts and through spreadsheets. As far as the dock and pile repair, we said we've taken a lot of damage this year. Beyond the $40,000 I get to do things. The $15,000 uptick in that is for pile replacement through Rockwell and Church Street. It's one of those line items that were in the old capital budget that just kept on getting pushed down the year to year. So what we did was decided to bring it into my operational budget so we can go out to bid, not at the bid, but get 3 quotes with the new levels of spending we can do for construction. And just start replacing, 15, 16 piles a year. Instead of trying to get 50,000 to do one big project.
If you'll recall, we made changes to the charter, right, which allows us to follow state guidelines and go from the 5,000 to 15,000, which is currently at right now, that's continuing to go up, so the flexibility is both quicker and also saves money in the long run. So, what other questions do we have for Greg?
And you had salaries too, right? Sweeney?
Thank you.
All right, so salaries, well, last year when I took the 20% cut was $10,000 in my seasonal help, which pushed me to a lot of Mondays and Tuesdays, and sometimes in the Wednesdays working at night, and I was doing 75 to 80 hours a week, so I'd really like to get my full staff back. We would also include a little bit of pay raise. I've been here 8 years now, and I haven't given any of my employees a nickel pay raise, but the minimum wage continues to grow. I also budgeted because I wasn't sure what the federal minimum wage was and how that was going to affect the department this year. And then in addition to, we're going to need some more seasonal help with the fuel pier, and especially running the shoulder seasons into the spring and the fall next year. Fall this year, and then next year's budget in the spring, we'll probably bring some of the summer help back a little earlier to help fuel boats as the weather gets nicer. So that's why the salary increases.
And if I may, it's also important to note that the increased fees will also be offset, if not entirely, but at least the majority of them, by the increases in revenues, not only from the fuel pier, but the expansion of the rate that's going to happen over some time.
Sounds good.
Tim, Aaron. That's why I gotta say your name. So,
Thank you, Greg. This is Aaron Lay speaking. I just, I noticed that there was a new line item in here that sounds really interesting and beneficial to the town. It's the public rights of way. Can you talk about that a little bit more? It sounds like, I know that there was like a repair of a bench that came up one time or something like that with a constituent. Is that kind of something that falls under this public rights of way maintenance?
So we have 40 plus public rights of ways in town. A lot of them are in need of some type of repair, whether it's some old concrete work, some riprap work. We had the bench down on the Kickapoo River, Kickapoo Ave, that needed to be repaired. So it was like, who's going to pay for this and not pay for this? And there was no money in my budget set aside to do a repair work. The bench down on the Kickapoo River or on Kickapoo Ave was installed in the late 60s, early 70s. The gentleman that I spoke to from Boston Bench Company remembers in his youth putting that there with his dad who owned the company at the time. We shipped that out. It's getting repowder coated, new slats. It's a little bit of new technology, and they're going to bring it down. We're going to reinstall that this spring. We have a couple other projects that need to be addressed. It was one of those things that we were putting on the capital budget. Hey, hopefully one day we'll be able to do this. But then we decided this year, let's just put it into the operational budget. Let's try to knock out some of the small hanging fruit. Work with the DPW director of taking care of some of this stuff. We can leverage the funds, $10,000, we might be able to turn into 15,000, 18,000 by all the different departments working together to help me out with this stuff, so. But that's what we're doing, we're, you know, so there's a problem right away, we're gonna try to address it with this.
I think that's great because I think more and more people are starting to discover these right of ways now.
Yeah.
And we had no choice like during this pandemic to kind of explore along the shorelines and things like that, my family at least, and we
Yeah.
did spend a lot of time heading on some of those right of ways.
Yeah, so-
My part of town, so.
If you see a problem, just let us know. I mean, we might not jump on it right away, but we'll get to it. You know, we have a good list of stuff right now we're working on.
Asking, what would you reference right to the federal minimum wage? I don't have any bearing on a discussion. I'm just
Well,
curious.
I know they were talking about a $15 federal minimum wage. I don't know where that, it seems like every time, you know, we've been going up $1, $2, you know, $15. You know, if we had a $15 federal minimum wage, and my assistant harbor master makes $14.50 an hour. So I gotta have to adjust him to $20 an hour. You know, $18.50, $19 an hour, and I don't know how that all falls into my salary pool, but if I can't pay the guy less money than the other guy.
You just went into a very political
No.
conversation.
And I'm not trying to get political.
No, but what I wanted to say.
Wow, you really wanna go?
I don't really want to go there.
When you look at the federal minimum wage, because we follow Rhode Island right now, so
Yeah.
that's more for federal
Right,
employees, correct? So, I mean, ours is what, I think it's gonna be up 12.
12,
I mean, I get your
12,
point, but a lot
12.50.
of people at that lower end, I understand.
Yeah.
You know, but it's, I think there's a goal to get in a few years to 15 in Rhode Island, but it's gonna go up to, it's gonna go up to 12, like in September, October, something like that.
Something like that.
12, 10, something like that.
So I'm just
I was just
preparing.
like, I know there's a debate that goes on, I just didn't.
Yeah,
I'm just curious.
well, I don't want to get political, but I'm just trying to, I'm trying to see the future.
I'm just trying to
Yeah.
ask the question, because we were told, unless they not allow states to set their own minimum wage, it's still be, I mean, right now, the federal government's minimum wage is $7.25.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so that's pretty.
I know, I work for him.
That's pretty bad.
Mr. Minister?
No, I'd just like to reference back to my opening statement. One of the things that's working here in this budget is the Harbor Masters Department, the marina expansion. Remember the last council meeting we had regarding it, the data, we anticipated 36%, roughly, hopefully 36%. That was conservative increase in revenue. So what Greg's talking about, the dock maintenance, the new maintenance to right of ways, that's all possible this year and offset by increased revenues that we're anticipating. So it was it's a wise move with the marina expansion. There's no impact to the local property tax rate because the fee structure and the changes and the transient slips, there should be a projected net revenue yet. So this is, we're moving forward. And again, we really like, and we spent some time on this, the annual maintenance, the pylon replacement every year rather than waiting until they get to a certain point, and then it costs us a lot of money. And then again, the right of ways is real crucial. So this is it's
Where was it, the right of ways budgeted for prior? Nowhere? It was kind of enveloped into, because I recall, obviously I recall the granite markers that were installed, and I know that was part of the grant.
We would try and fund some of those things through repairs and maintenance lines, grounds maintenance lines. We would try and find anywhere that we could, that it was reasonable to charge where we had a little bit of room, but we're capital even, but it was always really difficult. So this is, I think, a really good move.
Budgeting for it,
Yeah,
yeah.
to have it and, you know, to be able to be a little bit more proactive also with things.
The rights of ways bounced from the Harbor Master Department to Parks and Rec. And then when Walter was on his way out, he convinced me to take him back. I should have looked at him more thorough. But that's why they're back in the department.
The public can't see us smiling right now, but we're smiling. The knowing smile right now. What else do we have for Greg?
no, that was a quick comment I was going to make because it was on the Parks and Rec at one time.
Yeah.
To recall that was quite interesting. Which leads to the point that Julie was talking about funding.
Anything else for the harbor? Anyone? Greg, anything for us before you go?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
If you guys need anything, you know how to reach me. Thanks. Wait on me.
Okay, next on our list is 601, which is community development, 601.
It is I.
We haven't seen each other in so long.
I know, it's so good to be back.
Who's who?
Mark again. Here.
Welcome, Diane.
Thank you.
As you've heard, mask off when you're speaking is okay, and if you're not speaking, please use your mask. If you could take a moment and share any salient points that you want to, and then I'll open up the council for questions.
Okay. I don't really have, my budget is pretty much the standard operating budget that you've seen in the past years. There aren't a huge amount of changes. I think some of the edits you talked about with the other departments. So for example, vehicle mileage is now paid through payroll. So that's no longer an item specifically in the department budget. Similarly, I think the Historic District Commission, part of their operating budget included services from the solicitor's office, which are now included with the solicitor's line. And one other thing, I can't recall it now, but that's pretty much it for my department. As far as operating salary detail, you'll see we had a lot of turnover in the department last year. We had 3 retirements, 2 actually in building and 1 in planning or community development. So Ray Falcoa was part-time code compliance, and he became full-time, taking on the duties of the staff assistant to the Historic District Commission. So he is now in the department as a full-time employee. He was the position being held by Sue Church previously was part-time. So that was, those 2 were combined into Ray's position. So I think those were sort of the highlights that I wanted to make sure you saw.
So I'll start with a question. Then.
Sure.
I saw a decrease in Bristol HDC. We went from 11 to 5,000, so it's a $6,000 change. Can you speak to that?
Right. So that was, and Julie can jump in. The Historic District Commission line item in the department budget included the services for the solicitor who attended the meetings and gave the Historic District Commission guidance. And so it was felt that it would be better to incorporate that amount that was set aside for the solicitor in the actual solicitor's portion of your budget.
Gotcha. And that's it. Long story short.
Yes.
Perfect. Council?
Julie, I need to go back on the medical. I see quite a bit of an increase. Did anybody go from an individual to a family or vice versa?
Yeah, so that is
Was the
due to
assumption-
those retirements that Diane spoke of. There was an entire change in the makeup of the medical and dental coverage due to the change in staff.
So you're saying to Tony's point, there were single to family, those kind of things.
Yes,
Well,
I think
myriad
some were on
changes.
buybacks before and then have plans now, so.
I mean, Ray went to full-time position, but again, that is not good, right?
I would have to.
Yeah, it isn't good.
As a retiree of the town, he has his health insurance, and so I think he was okay with not taking any benefit, and he's non-union, so.
Right. I think it was Sue Francis, Sue Church. I don't know if she got benefits.
If you're interested, I'm happy to provide the list of changes, but really, it's just a matter of different makeups of families versus individual versus buybacks.
I think Tony's doing what we all do is we focus on those.
Mhm.
I did the same thing, looking at those differences, larger increases or decreases. It draws your eye to it. But as the other departments, besides what's already been brought up, it's simple, it's straightforward. It's a very little change besides the change we've already expressed. And council appreciates it. What other questions do we have for Diane?
Diane, Tim, a question in regards to tourism and just if you could explain, there is a little bit, I see there's an explanation here about the list of the events, maybe Chris probably talk.
I would defer to Chris on that. I think he spent a lot of time with the different organizations.
And it looks like the department wanted 48,000. We'll drop down to 35 recommendation there. Is that based on maybe the events, but I'll let you speak to it.
Certainly. So earlier this year, I sat down with the different organizations that make up the tourism partnership. With COVID, there were definitely some changing priorities and things I identified this year as activities that would really help them bounce back from the pandemic. I know that in the line where it says departmental requests, that is the request straight from the organizations. So I know in conversations with the administrator sitting down as they reviewed the budget, my recommendation would be in line with what the administrator put down in his line. So I do know it is an increase. I do know that there are, again, like every year, there's activities that certainly are prioritized over others. And I know that it's just going to be a matter of going out and figuring out what's the best to support our businesses.
So the merchants group, the tourism, the tourism group, sure they had some very good recommendations for different ideas to help bring mainly the downtown economy back. But I think they're gonna have to go back, if this recommended amount, which is an increase of $5,000, they just have to determine how they're gonna spend that additional $5,000 this year. So we thought it was important to help with the recovery downtown, to give a little bit more money, but that full amount just was not feasible or affordable for us this year, what they recommended. But I do believe a 16% increase in 1 year is a very big boost to them. And they just have to determine which of these events that they're recommending they want to go with that additional $5,000.
Any other questions?
I'm sorry. Well, I suppose if it's an extra $5,000, it looks like they'll be able to have like 3 additional events. And is that kind of what the reference is to, as the like State Street Fair events?
Yeah, Councilman Steve Contenti again. That was our frame of thought at that point, to help them with events downtown. How they spend that would be up to the council that meets with Chris Vitale.
Inside, it does, to your point, Aaron, it does talk to 2,500 for British Car, State Street Fair 1,500, State Street Fair is obviously multiple events there. So to your point, I agree with you. Yeah, it seems like that would add 3 or 4 events to it.
Their request is for 48,000, what they think it would cost. So, I mean, I'm not saying that this year was necessarily short, because I do tie that back in my mind to the food and beverage taxes, which are about half, which I figured it would be a little more than half, but it's 60-something%, and that's even that, but that's what I was. So I do think that we need to go above that. I mean, it's hovered around that 25 to 35,000 for a number of years, ever since it started. I think it started at like 30 or 35 or 40,000. And it went down, it goes back up, it goes back and forth. So it looks like an increase, but it's not really a big increase, because they're still down net from several years ago. But I will say that I think we really need to look at that. And I can live with it for this year because of the fact that we have, it takes money to make money kind of theory. And I know we talk about this just about every year. But because the food and beverage tax is so low, the income that we got because of 2020, we need to build that back up. But we do need to do some, to tie that together in some way, or some percentage of that is a good thing to do. And I think we want to get to all of our different, various activities. And they did a great job in doing a lot of them last year. I mean, some of them they were able to do, and I think that's great. And we'll look forward to even more, being able to, particularly in the fall, as I would think more so in the spring. So, because, I've been thinking about this food and beverage tax, Diane, and I saw it on one of our budgets, that Julie submits to us in our council meetings. And I mean, that is, and I think we're heading close to 500. I thought that we would get close to about 500,000 this year, this past year. And to be, and most of our, of course, is on the beverage, but, it's 283, so that's a substantial difference. So hopefully we'll get back to something close to what we really work.
Agreed. Agreed.
This is my thought about it, I do think that advertising, that promotion, and not just the money that it costs the events, and perhaps there'll be some money that comes in of federal money that, will help promote tourism that we can use towards that. Because I do think the promotion that we do at the big level, like with the Pierre Horn in New York and stuff, is important and something that we should invest in. That's my thoughts.
Well, I'm speaking with Jeff Hirsch, right? He's been Explore Bristol and obviously part of this. He speaks again and again to the fact that advertising now for next year, right? Whatever you're doing now is next year's benefit. So last year, we'll see the fruits of those labors now this year. So obviously it's not that simple, but that was kind of a reoccurring thing. And I do agree that I think this is a nice steady increase on it. This is a particularly, I'm sorry, there's always challenges every year, and this one has its own reasons for being challenged. This year is pretty clear in why it is, but I think I agree with you, it needs to continue. I think this is a steady increase. I think it's a good increase, and we keep an eye on, and we look for feedback from Chris, look for feedback from Diane, the administrator, and of course the tourism committee, and what aren't they able to do that they want to do, and do we see the funds to be able to fund? Yeah. What else for Diane? Tony?
So regarding this here, there's a couple things, a couple observations that I'd like to make. One is, what are they actually using this funding for? I mean, I know it says here, but what is the real purpose? What are they applying towards? Is it for security? Is the police, the details covered through this? Or are we covering details in addition to this? It would be interesting. I mean, yeah, okay, so you said British car, the British motor cars in Bristol.
Right,
Okay,
doesn't add up to the dollar.
2,500.
Right.
Okay, what is the application of that? Because to the point I hear, let's give them more for what reason? What are they investing the money that we're giving to them? How are they investing that? Would be important to hear directly, as to how that's being applied. And is any of this going to detail, or are we covering detail in addition to the funding that we're providing? So that's part of the equation when we're saying, let's give more because.
I don't think this is details. I don't think it's details.
I'm pretty sure it is Steve, I believe they do pay for their details directly for the small events. Also pays for their advertising, and when they need to rent tents and so forth, we can certainly get a line if we don't already as to what the money was spent on for each individual event.
I'll tell you what, and I don't know if we all be interested, but it's been a while since we've had a conversation. This council, maybe we could have representation, not necessarily in regards to this particular line item, but just in general, to hear a focus on from both of you, from the administrator, from the tourism committee, to hear where they see themselves going, what challenges they have, and to Tony's point, where is the money going? And is it going in the correct place? Obviously, details are extremely important, but is that something that we could find funding someplace else? It's a great question. So I know if we're all interested. All right, great. So why don't we consider that next step, not at our next council meeting, but actually, it'd be great is in April. Because that's right before the season really kicks in high gear of hearing where they're going, and also give them an opportunity to share with the public.
A workshop, like, either the public hearing night or one of those others that ties into this, even though it's not exactly related, it would be nice to visit the format. I don't know, we could come back in real meetings, but, or a regular meeting, it'd be nice to have like a workshop format with a couple of those people.
Agreed, agreed. We're hoping to, this is our first foray into more and more face-to-face. That is the goal. So, safely, cautiously, but moving forward.
And very quickly, I mean, this doesn't really relate so much to the administrator and Chris. This is more of them. They would say, okay, well, we would take another 25. Oh, why not make it 2,800? So I think it's important to get from them. It's not the justification of the administrator, Chris. I mean, they just come to them and says, okay, this is what we think we could use. Okay, let's have that conversation.
I think it's an important one.
I
Really
think,
good.
Tony, I think it's a very valid response to try to understand what the marketing plans are behind every event, so we understand tallying up what the dollar figures are, I think. And also, like, what are those metrics that they're capturing to understand? So we all know, like, Facebook is very, very powerful about geolocating when you're targeting, when you want to target very specific people. Are they doing that? How much is that costing? Things like that. So we have a better understanding of what the whole marketing plan is and that too. And also I'd like to talk to them, I'm curious about the new marina expanding as well, what they're planning on marketing that as well, because that's gonna be ideal. We want to get that message out. Fuel stations open, we're open for business to come, so,
I'd like to see also how they're gonna measure the impact from, this is the first year, but the National Byway designation, I'd like to know how we could maybe measure that if we see any uptick in anything with visitors and so forth. So that's something they can capitalize on too. And I think
Yeah.
what Chris and I have shared with them too is that they've got to find ways to leverage their funds and they've got to piggyback on other things to stretch their dollars. So we can maybe chat about that too.
I think like, maybe as Brett mentioned, a few minutes ago, was, working with all of them around the marina and all of that. So I do think that it's a two-way street, so he would need to be at this meeting as well, probably. Because it'd be nice for his rate Doppler or whatever his thing that he's talking about.
DACWA.
Are able to push out, like, this is an event we're having this weekend coming up, so all the voters might come in, these dock space for them, they can come to the state fair, whatever. I think that would be good, and then they also need to figure out how to like get the word out to people as the train is coming in. If they can put together what I think would be great, especially a little bit in the off season, are those, and I think they're working on this, like the package deals for the restaurants or the staying over, with dock space with coupons and whatever else. Or, I've seen a couple of places. Some of the smaller communities, I think Narragansett might do it, I think the Spanish does it, they do their own restaurant. And I mean, I don't know if we've done East Bay Restaurant Week, I know we've piggybacked on the Newport.
Chamber of Commerce did something, I recall, a few years back, not recent.
Yeah.
Probably
And
like
I
4,
don't
5,
know, that's
6
something to
years.
look at as well, especially this year to highlight something. Might be like the Bristol County.
To that end, I mean, we'll be going over this in a moment with municipal observances. There are holiday lighting and concerts on the common. There's some wonderful things you said, to leverage their funds and piggyback. It's a great point.
No one ever goes to the country club. I mean, that's something that is never promoted really. Not, it's attended, but sort of the regulars, I
It
think.
used to be quite busy, I don't see it to be
Yeah, that was across the street.
It's a long walk.
I know. I used to think I could hear it from the porch, and then I realized how much traffic really goes on High Street that, you really, the wind isn't coming the right way. And every time you're hearing a great, the cars would go by, so you can't really do that.
Anything else on 601? Bringing it right back to community development. Anything else? No? Okay. All right, so we're going to move to 602. Welcome back, Diane.
Thank you.
Building inspection, where we're at with 602. Hello.
Glad to meet you.
Kind of, right?
You and I have met.
Yes.
I don't know about everyone else.
So let's give you a moment to introduce yourself. And
Yeah, I'm Stephen Greenlee. I'm a building official, fairly new, 7 months here. I getting to know Bristol. When I started, I said I was gonna give it 6, 8 months to get used to it and not do anything drastic in that period, and just been kind of getting to know the guys out there in the field and folks who come into the office and such. And putting in some systems to kind of streamline the building official's office. You'll see that we're asking for a budget number that pretty much reflects last year's, which was a reduced budget number for COVID. And we're not quite sure what the building world is going to be like this year. So I think we all agree that we're going to kind of keep on the same road that we have been going down. You'll see that it appears that it took a significant hit, but we took code compliance out of our budget and put it in Diane's because Ray Falco was doing double duty and we just wanted to have it in one place. So after that, there's a couple of things that are shifting around, but it's basically the same as last year.
So Steve, you are more than welcome to come in front of this council with a 20% increase anytime.
It looks like 20%, but actually 40%.
So what questions do we have for Steve? Steve Greenlee, sorry.
I do, Mr. Chairman, Tony Texera. The projection here that you had 260,000 last year, 260,000 this year. With all of the stay at home, all the construction going on, there has not been much of an increase. You're not projecting an increase in that? Because I mean, I'm seeing that pretty much across the board in other communities. And I know we're experiencing the big time with the folks not traveling back, doing more homework, more work from home. They build remodeling, redoing, restructuring their homes to accommodate their needs to work from home. You're not projecting a little bit more than that?
Well, we did some numbers and the way we did them, and I was trying to make a case to the state to change our fee structure. So what we looked at actual years as opposed to fiscal years. And last actual year came in at about 20% less in fees than the year before. So that would have been the whole of 2020 was 20% down from revenues from 2019.
But isn't that directly attributed to COVID, or would it feel that way? Or am
I would think so, but there is it's kind of holding its own because people are doing all the remodeling and are staying at home, and we do have a lot of small projects taking place.
Currently at 60% for revenues, and we're 70% through the year, but with building being seasonal, we should see a nice uptick in the springtime. So I think we're projecting, when I met with Steve on it, we seem to be projecting about 260,000 this year.
But to Tony's question, it feels, and maybe I agree with you, is that it feels like the world that there's a lot of interest in building expansion and remodeling and all of that. So, but you're saying that the numbers that you're seeing don't reflect the feel of the actual, say, it's not a.
I would, it's like smaller projects. You might have, it might take you, 100 projects to build
To
one
equate one
house,
home,
one big
yeah.
house, that's.
Right.
Is that a fair assessment, Steve?
I think so, but I've only been here 7 months, so I don't really have a track record. We look back at the actual numbers, and we went back actually 3 years, but I don't have that data here tonight.
Last year, for reference, we took in 223,000 from the building inspector's office, so that was a little bit low, but the year before we had 344,000. So it is really all over the place. I wouldn't be surprised if we do start seeing more, but then we have the new state fees that we're following. And so it is a little bit hard to budget for.
Did you speak to those state fees that were following?
Steve Greenlee can, better than I can.
I generally speak,
Yeah.
10,000 foot views, fine.
Yeah, the fee structure that Bristol was using for the last 10 years or so was the same. And I have no idea how it was developed initially. But there was pressure from the state to use their own fee schedule. And every couple of years, we had to go to them and ask for a waiver to use our own, which many towns do. So, but we did a study on, we took the last 2 years and said, okay, if we had used the state fee structure and then compared it to what we used as the Bristol structure, we came up with a surplus in each of the last 2 years if we used the state structure. And it's easier, and there's no waivers every year. I don't know, maybe every couple of years, I'm not sure exactly. But it seemed to be a no-brainer to just kind of condescend to use their structure, which makes us more money.
Other questions for Steve?
Just see, welcome on board. I had a question in regards to the processing. What is the typical time for processing permits and everything else? And are you quite busy or not very busy at all? Because some of the feedback I've gotten, it's been a little on the slower side, but I just want to understand the process first.
Well, the process is pretty much reliant on the digital permitting software. So a lot of it for the past 7 months has been me trying to catch up because there was a large 2-month gap at the end of Rich's time here, and there was kind of a getting to know you period, and so I was working extra hours to kind of catch up on the plan reviews and process the fees, and we're at a point now where we're processing them fairly quickly. Nobody should wait more than a week for a small project, and usually a week to do the first round for a larger project, because it's always like, I do my initial review and then feed it back to folks in a large house or whatever. And so that there initiates a give and take.
So you're saying you're now caught up. We were playing catch up, and I appreciate all the extra hours you put in, by the way. But you're now feel like you're caught up, or you need help.
I don't, it's kind of still a getting to know you period, because in the last month, it's taken it's slowed down considerably, and I think that's seasonal. And having started in the middle of COVID with a backlog, I don't really have a sense of where we're going to be if we have a tremendous spring or whatever. But we have the systems in place to kind of work our way through that, and I think that we can. We can't. I don't know that we need that staff. I mean, we played different games with how to catch up, and I had an inspector for a while, and I think we've determined that we're going to try to see how we can do without that inspector. So I've been doing the inspections, and at this point, there shouldn't be a problem with that. We're still kind of playing it by ear a little bit.
What else?
Yes, and this one, yeah, I think the administrator can provide some insight to this one. And it's the mileage that I'm seeing here. Oops, I skipped the page here. I see that you threw in 4,400 for mileage. Was that shifted from somewhere else, or is that a new item? That's right on the salary detail.
So that is something that we're following the general accounting principles. And we are actually paying them through stipend through the payroll rather than fuel allotment, which yes, that's what we did. So this, we figured out the average. We used the formula on how many averages were estimated, how many miles were estimated, multiplied by the federal rate for mileage reimbursement. That's what we came up with that. So that's split amongst all the inspectors.
So that would kind of, so to that end, so that 408 said vehicle mileage, so the page before was 55 zeroed out, and that's where we show it now. Is that mileage type? So we went.
And we zeroed out the vehicle mileage.
So 5,500 was in there for department request, zeroed by the town administrator and put into mileage stipends. Is that right?
Correct.
Got it.
Okay.
There are
So it
three,
was shifted. Yeah,
yeah, 3 employees getting a monthly stipend,
understood.
total.
Yeah, a couple other points about the budget. So code compliance officer, well, we did consolidate the 2 part-time to 1 full-time. The function of the job is still the same, so you can still help that department with code compliance, so you're still available. And also the temporary inspector line was pushed up again this year, actually $2,000. Not a huge amount, but where as needed, there's building official can bring a temporary inspector in if needed.
Anything else for the building inspector? Steve, anything for us before you go?
I'm all set, thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, so we're on the time permitting portion. We're doing excellent in regards to time management here. May I suggest we go with some of the easy lifts first? I would say one of the less easy lifts is finance, right? Finance, debt service, and fixed charges. But maybe we can go right, if everybody's okay with this, we'll go right to the town administrator. That would be 402. So far, we have no questions that we need to come back to later on, right? Okay. So, Mr. Administrator, 402.
Okay, so my budget, no significant increases, 0.08% increase. Mainly that was 1% in salary. Really, I'm really looking for double funding.
How dare you? Any questions in regards to level funding? The administrator and I have had a conversation a couple of times in regards to his budget, like the council has contingency. If you notice on his line item, it's about it's not that, it is $1,000. Council contingency is historically been $10,000. And the administrator and I have talked about this a couple of times, and I know Tony's experienced this on his time as the administrator. There's sometimes opportunities that would be appropriate for him or her, as the case may be, to take advantage of without coming to the council. So I would like us to, I don't know if I call this a question, but maybe we can come back to this depending on what our outcome is later on throughout the budget as we get through Thursday. The administrator didn't ask me to do this. I think that this is something that for example, the coins that were recently, we all got a couple of them to give out. And there are sometimes trophies from jail trophies and plaques for Eagle Scouts and all that stuff that comes out of that. So, Mr. Administrator, remind me, you hit that cap most of the time or come close to it, or you tend to go over it. So we don't have to come up with a solid dollar figure right now, but I'm thinking something like $2,000.
You said 20,000?
My goodness, no.
No.
No, and I would be amenable to, because if you look at our council contingency, again, this is just for conversation purposes, as we get closer. We don't typically use all of our council contingency. I think it's important that we continue with it, but maybe we can take that and move it over to get rid of. I don't think for those things that the administrator needs to come in front of the council for trophies and those things. He doesn't right now, but for those above and beyond. So
Swapping 1,000 from ours.
exactly. So it would cost a net zero difference. We never come close. Julie, could you tell us last year and the year before maybe? And I know we used it for other things.
So,
Again, it's not something we need to solid right now, but it would be a net zero.
But with ours, you gotta remember, since we haven't been in person,
Right.
there hasn't been as many requests as normally would.
You're absolutely right. So if we go back a
Otherwise, we
couple of
would be
years.
tapped on for more things.
Right.
When we do on the meeting Zoom, it's like, okay, let's just get over it, done, you know.
As Tim called it, it was more transactional.
That no one could be in person, so like the robotics team and stuff like that, they're all like virtual, you know.
Julie?
fiscal 19, the contingency line was 7252, that's how much they spent. And actually fiscal 20 was 6,200, so reflective of COVID.
So if, assuming a $10,000 number and it was, and again, we don't need to make a decision right now, I just wanted to put it out there and consider it. All right, beautiful. What do we have for the administration?
Certainly, I'm in agreement, having said it for years, occasionally, from time to time, you do have a lot, you go, well, I wish I had a couple extra bucks in the end to it. Not to be extravagant about it, but just to meet, you know, if you had some group visiting down and sort of taking care of some things, you know, I certainly agree, you know, that you need a little more of a quotient in the end.
And as we progress through the budget, we can talk about it. Does that make sense? What else for the administrator? We're gonna fly right through this.
Thank you.
Mr. Administrator, anything before we move forward?
No, thank you for your support.
Beautiful. All right, so let's go next to the next on the list, which is 806, and that's municipal observances, 806. They just go to 806.
Give us that.
By the way, I had to work out this weekend to carry this book.
Who's speaking on observances? You, Mr. Administrator?
I will, I'm not sure if anyone from the 4th of July committee is on Zoom. So want to participate and on the fact that come in.
I'll tell you what we'll do is, because we have abbreviated processes this evening as it pertains to Zoom, is it, if you want to check and see if there is someone from 4th of July committee, and I would say that would primarily be Michelle Martin, right? But it could be anyone that would be represented.
Do you ask them to raise their hand if they want to speak?
That's an outstanding idea. I know they just heard you, so. Where I was going was that we do have municipal observances tomorrow, so we can come back to that if someone wanted to speak. Nothing? Okay, all right, so I'll tell you what, why don't we'll make a certain note to come back to that, particularly the 4th of July, it's great. So, but do you want to speak to the others besides the 4th of July?
I certainly can, and I have met with the chairperson and the assistant chair, the vice chair recently last week regarding 4th of July. And I did state to them that the funding would be level, and the recommendation would be level funding, so they are aware of the funding level. So the other items here are second year that we did not fund the last night concert on contribution. I know the 4th of July committee was working with the White Foundation last year, and they wanted to see if maybe they could make some type of arrangements, include them somehow in the concert series, or work it out with a stage rental for the fall. But as far as I know, there aren't any concerts similar to that right now. Concerts on the Common, not knowing what the later in the summer is going to look like. We recommended a level funding. It's $2,000, but I think there'll quite a few happy people if we could have a few concerts on the Common this summer. So we're asking for that funding. Veterans holidays level funding.
Right across the board level funding.
Yeah, the flags, we're pretty much, patriotism is our flag. So we purchased the flags for all of the town departments here at Town Hall. And we keep them stored here. And I believe we're pretty much at the end of this year's funding. So we do spend every penny of that. Christmas festival level fund, they're doing a terrific job. And, holiday lighting and level fund. I will say that I am working on potentially replacing the Christmas tree. We had an arborist. There was some criticisms last year. We did have the arborist spend some time on it last summer, late last summer. In fact, we even did some pruning to check the soil, but for some reason the tree seems to be thinning out. So we are looking at potentially replacing that this year. But I'm hoping individuals I've been talking with, I'm hoping they'll get donated.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so we have no changes in this budget whatsoever. Any conversation or questions on it?
I just had a question, on the stage rental. I know the costs on, it brought to my attention, it's maybe your priority, but as regards to, at some point, maybe putting the stage in at the, as like a capital project down the line. Only because I think some of these groups, like Fourth of July committee, have to spend so much money to rent the stage. They say it's, I think it's $45,000, $50,000 to rent a stage. So I was just curious. We can talk offline if you want on it, but
Yeah, no, Councilman, I know that we've been talking about that. It is in our capital budget. Because of the pandemic, we put it out another year. But we learned that it is very, very expensive. There were coastal issues because being so close to the water. State historic, coastal, there's some other regulations. It's
Town insurance, right? There's increases there.
Yeah.
It's not a reason not to, but I know we wanted to look at other opportunities for it. Because you're right, it's a lot of money.
I forgot it was on the.
It is in-
It is listed, so we can have it on the radar. All right, thank you.
Anything else for Mary?
I just want to say, I'm not really sure what's gonna happen this year, but I know we had a big discussion last year about the last night concert. I mean, a lot of people go to it, a lot of people look forward to it. And just, to just do away with it completely, you were able to get away with it this past year, we didn't do anything. But is that something we really want to do, or is it more of like financing, figuring out how else to pay for it? And I'm just not sure of that. I mean, lots of people go, I don't know. I know it's expensive on our end. And we have to pay for all the staging and lighting, and they just pay for the instrument. I mean, they pay for the performers, the musicians. I just want to raise that point. I mean, is that something we want to do permanently? It's, I think that's, if it's not in here this year, that's where we're heading. And whether that is a way to get people to say, hey, wait a second, we want a committee to do this and help. If you don't have it one year, that we really miss it, or, oh, well, it's just, we've got plenty of other events. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think there's got to be, is there like an alternate plan? Like, maybe people will come forward. Is this a trial basis to try it and see how it goes without having it for a year? Or are we just saying it's not anymore? I mean, what is the council, the town's actual message to the public?
All right, how we left it last year, actually, after the last concert, we had some discussions with the 4th of July committee who were interested in overseeing and running it. And as I stated earlier, they did speak with the producer there. The representative from the Rhode Island Philharmonic. They require a certain size stage, which is actually much larger than the stage that the Fourth of July Concert Series uses. So they started making some headway. I wouldn't say we're never going to see them back here again. I will check back now that the pandemic is that we're hopefully moving out of the pandemic, and we perhaps the 4th of July to help us. But the problem with the concert, aside from the funding, it was the volunteers, the help and the drive to keep it going. That was also dwindling. And I know recreation had more of a hand in it in the last couple of years that we ran it. So to your question, I don't think we're ready to throw in the towel. I think we check in with the 4th of July committee, and they have the resources and expertise to keep it going. But again, we kind of got off track with it because of the pandemic. But they have other ways of bringing in revenues that we didn't. They have some sales. They're well organized to bring in vendors at the concert. So they're looking at it as a revenue maker for them. So I'll check back with the chairperson.
I think one of the things that, I think this is true for what Dorothy as well, and certainly for this concept, where you could, sell spaces, or have some chairs there already and sell them. I'm not saying little table necessarily with alcohol or anything like that. I don't think we want to go down that path, but I'm just saying, you could have something where it would generate some revenue for this event. And, now you have the spaces where the sponsors, so to speak, that they can just go into that roped up area. But if you actually set up an area and people were able to purchase tickets, was 10, 15, 20, they could be different levels of support, that might be a way to do it. And, maybe they get to have, to meet the musicians after or beforehand. I think they have like a little different levels, like there might be something that's a lot of money for a space, but you get to have dinner with them. We have, because I think there's always a caterer there that they come and eat before they go on and perform or right after or something like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think there's something to think about and doing it that way as well. I know that takes, person power to do.
That, the administrator hit it right in the head. Having been there for 4 years, it was a struggle. I mean, a struggle to get, to get the funding, to get the sponsors to kick in. In fact, some of them, they probably still owe money. They just never met up with their quota. They were getting free advertisement when they shouldn't have been. Eventually, we got rid of that, 2 years into it, it was just time out, you're not kicking in your dollars, so that became an issue. And to your point about selling space, the 4th of July's tried that, and they haven't been very successful. They're a much larger committee.
I've never seen that.
They've tried that with, not gonna, but they tried some of
I
that.
mean, I don't think it's been well publicized because I think.
So, but to the point there, that it just hasn't been, and now that it's off the radar for 1 year, I'm not so sure that we want to get back to it.
Well, I didn't know the radar.
Please, Well,
Everything was
it's
on the
not-
radar pretty much
right.
last year. I think we need to have an answer for it. Like, is it no, we can't do anymore, we can't afford it, we don't have any volunteers. I mean, people come and ask, we need to know, like, we didn't do it this year because we had a lot of other activities
Right.
and we're seeing if people really will miss it and want to come forward. We weren't really sure what, I mean, I think that we need to have a response. Is this just something like, we're done with it because it costs us too much money, even though people think it's free because it's, that they're making their donation, that they're like paying the musician. That's all. I mean, we're gonna have to answer, there are people who enjoy it and they're gonna ask us questions about
Right. Oh, no, I agree 100%. But when I dealt with it was important, was the financing and volunteerism. It just was not there. I mean, when the administrator had to be there and the administrative assistant had to sit there because we couldn't get anybody else to come down and check people in and reserve spots for the musicians, that becomes an issue. So. But anyway, but as the administrator pointed out, if the 4th of July committee has a plan that they can put forth, or somebody else can go for it,
Yeah, the 4th of July committee is much more equipped and experienced to run a concert rather than a handful of us one night only. It is quite an undertaking. It's expensive too, but I think let's try one more run at the Fourth of July committee. See if they're still willing to take it.
Anything else? Okay. So I'm gonna hit finance last. If everybody's okay with that, we'll see how we're doing with time here. So we're gonna go next to 407, which is municipal court, 407.
So, four, you'll see that the revenue is slightly different than what was projected, mainly due to COVID. The last court session that we had was in November, and we just started court sessions last week. So hopefully we're trying to increase those revenues again. There really hasn't been much changes to the salary or detail wages or supplies. Actually, it's pretty much the same. The only thing that's really changed was just the amount of revenue that we received in from this report.
Any questions on municipal court? Municipal court going twice?
I just had a question. It's like
Yeah.
a license fee for 2021, that's the 7,300.
Yeah, so that's the license fee for the software that we use for the operating system, but we do also have IT support that comes in occasionally when there's Michelle Sparrow uses that and Arthur, Arthur's last name. So sometimes we use the funds from there to help offset some of that costs. But again, we haven't had any type of municipal court since November, so we really haven't been utilizing the IT services.
Just remind me, the municipal part is there held in the morning or in the evening?
Both.
Oh,
So it's twice a month. The second Tuesday of the month, we have it in an AM session. And then the fourth Tuesday of the month, we have a PM session.
Anything else for municipal court? Not gonna ask what? Right, beautiful. Thank you. 401 is town council. So we're gonna present to ourselves and see if we're happy with what we're doing. Anybody want to give a glowing review? Anybody take turns? Anybody? Anybody like it?
It's probably just fine, but I mean, with the end of the so we have that one question anyway.
Yep, which we'll certainly come back to. That's a great point, Mary. Melissa, did you want to speak on anything? Because I know that you and I spoke about some adjustments. So as everyone knows, the clerk presents the council's budget for the council. So if you're not happy with it, talk to the clerk.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
1-0.
Yes, we're actually smiling. All right, so major differences are the annual audit is budgeted more for this year because of, remind us, Julie?
This year, we were actually scheduled to go out to bid for audit services, and I thought we were going to be putting in a decent increase. And then I was just recently notified that the Auditor General's office is allowing for one-year extensions, and so I would like to take advantage of that and keep our, because we have a very good rate on our audits, 28,000 total, but it is allocated between the general fund and the enterprise fund.
Thank you. So Melissa, I do want you to speak on this, is that you and I spoke about IT and software, and I know that you were working on a few things there as it pertains, but I think the whole story's there in 2000.
No, it's not. So one of the things that I have mentioned before that I was looking to do, which I think would be very beneficial to not only the residents of the town, the volunteers, and the town council, is allowing this board and commission website, which so currently we have 34 different boards and commissions. We have a little over 222 members. This particular program will serve as a centralized location for all membership information for each board and commission. It tracks vacancies and term expirations for all the board members. It tracks membership over time. So it actually gives a historical timeline of anybody who's ever served on any type of particular board. As you may also know, there are certain boards that people can't hold two positions in one board and hold another, so it's a good way to track that as well. The other thing that it does is it provides this custom notification process. So anytime a board or commission member term is looking to expire, it's computer generated, so it actually saves us on mailing fees and sends them an email responding to them, letting them know that their reappointment is coming up, which also will save us on mailing for that particular portion of it. It allows residents to view any particular, well, all the boards that we have in one centralized location. They can look for vacancies coming up in the next 30, 60, 90 days. They can see what each board description is. It also allows some transparency and some openness so people can actually find it. One thing that I did want to say was that at one of our last council meetings, I believe the Chairwoman Varela had mentioned that people should get more involved in some of the boards and commissions. And as always, the chairman and everybody from the council is always looking to get volunteers. And this is a good way for people to research it. I have people call me, and right now it's pretty outdated system that we use. We use a Microsoft Word Excel spreadsheet, which is, we spend a lot of time trying to figure that out than we actually need to. And it's hard to actually keep track of it at times. So this just provides an easy flowing system for everybody. The other thing too that I did want to note is previously in prior years, this particular line item was used for council document storage, and the council was actually contributing $6,300 from the year 2010 to 2017. And then it went down to $1,000. The last budget in 2020 to 2021, they reduced that $1,000. I was able to find a restricted state archive fund that I can actually use those monies to pay for the document preservation from the town council. So it's almost like an offset. So the state preservation account is actually going to absorb the funds that the council used to pay the $6,300, actually accounted for a cheaper rate of $5,800. But it's just a good way to implement new software and systems into the office. And that's what I'm looking to do with the $2,000 for the boards and commissions.
How much is the progress?
For the boards and commissions, $2,000.
Oh,
So it's
so
2,000.
you just explain the 2,000?
Yes.
I'm gonna say like 6, 7.
No, doesn't that sound better that it's only 2?
I'm shocked. I don't know anything like that.
Sorry.
$2,000.
Is it's the terms and conditions on this new software, what do they know you're gonna pay for in upgrades and updates?
So I'm not aware of any upgrades fees coming forward, but it is also software that we can cancel at any time. So we're not committed to that.
I think it's great. I think, definitely it's gonna save you time and it's gonna make you more efficient and better fit your job and you're not worried about all this. And it's gonna get us better organized and I'm all for it. Just ask you to look at the terms and conditions in regards to, hey, just curious what you guys charge for your maintenance charges, upgrades, all that stuff. It may be included, but it may be a hidden fee. So just something, you're like, oh my God, we didn't budget enough for it. So, thanks.
Like purchase a pipe but pay through the ink.
Yes,
Or the
yeah.
or the toner.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good similar,
Right.
very good similar.
So the other line item is advertising that went up from $13,000 to $15,000.
Yes.
And again, Melissa and I talked about this prior to the meeting, and primarily it's Zoom, as in, look at the first page of our agenda. It means that we have to advertise more, is how I understood it. What else
Yeah.
weighed into that, Melissa?
So it's basic, the majority of that fee increase is mainly because of the size of the advertising that we put in the paper, so it's significantly larger ads, because we have to put the Zoom link, the Zoom meeting information, the Zoom phone numbers, all of that, so it actually increases the size of the actual ad.
Interesting.
And when COVID is declared done, at some point, are we gonna continue to do Zoom, or are you just gonna go back to, our regular broadcast?
Regular broadcast series, right? So it's interesting that you say that. So this system that we're all sitting here, and I know it's not working in its utmost at the moment, but it's designed to broadcast both Zoom and to full channel. So if you don't have Zoom and you watch it on your TV, you can watch it on the TV and it's the same thing. The difference, now we have 4 cameras, right? And they'll pick up us and the audience and then whomever is sitting here on these chairs, right? And then get broadcasted on there. So Zoom will continue, but to that end, again, Melissa and I were talking about this, there's a proposed bill at the House to make Zoom a requirement, and more specifically through 2023. And stop me anywhere you disagree. And that it would make it so you cannot require someone to be face-to-face through 2023. I personally don't agree with that. I think that what's happening tonight is a big reason why we're moving along, is that we can see each other, and body language, and instead of saying, raising a hand and all that, we have nice smooth transitions, things. So I am absolutely for Zoom, to be very clear. And what I mean by that is in conjunction with how we do business, but having people here when it's safe, when it's appropriate, of course, and I think is so valuable to all. So
Could I just ask,
I don't want to go too far off the subject.
I don't have an issue with the extra amount of money, but I guess my question would be, even if we continue it, so in schools, instead of snow days, canceling something, you'll go to Zoom. So I would say that even if you could do that, and there was a way to promote it, like the big storm, that you had that option instead of confirmation, that's all good. I'm simply saying that if we are going to be in person and we promote and advertise the meeting appropriately, then I would guess that the Zoom link wouldn't have to be in there, because you can use Zoom and you want to come on Zoom, you could just go into the, like, on the website and find the link.
It's interesting.
So I'm just wondering, because right now it has to be
It's a requirement.
requirement, because there's no other way to make sure the public is informed or knows,
Right.
because mostly people can't come into the building.
Right.
So I'm just curious about that.
That's a good
Down-
point.
Down the point, down the road.
I don't know where we're going with this, but I do think that as the requirements ease to only have it Zoom or Zoom requirement, then maybe advertising will change too, that it won't need this. And we'll have a Zoom link on there, but it won't be, the advertising won't require
Right.
I'm showing the foot's worth
That's
of
my
page
point.
on it, so.
Prior to, you mean after the 2003, the next fiscal year?
Whatever,
Okay.
when restrictions, when public, how do we say this, when open meeting requirements change in the sense of that face-to-face will be the norm, or at least the majority norm. Right now, it's not, right? It's Zoom almost all, so that's a good point. So, but this capability will continue for Zoom, and then Zoom, our programs and all that allow us to, you mentioned snow days and all that.
So I understand we have here, I just, it was for the advertising requirement.
Yeah.
Because it would be, doing our regular advertising.
It would save us some money though.
There also had been, like in 2009, 17, 18, the 2018 budget, we did also go over without any Zoom requirements, almost $3,000. So I think that it's been the 13,000 for quite amount of time, and I
It's time to
it's kind of
connect it to reality. What else? Okay, hearing nothing else on town council. Let's go to 403, unless there's objection, 403 town clerk.
Thanks, come on, roll, thanks.
You are. So I'd like to get, before you start, Melissa, it's about 5 minutes past 9 right now. We're certainly going to go through the clerk right now, through all of these numbers. Is there appetite to hit one or two or all of finance this evening, or do we want to hit one of those after the clerk? Everybody okay, keep going?
Yeah.
Perfect, all right. Good. I'd rather do more early and be done early, so.
So one thing that I want to bring up first is our revenue, which I have, which you're going to be happy to hear, is that we actually surpassed the amount of revenue thus far. So our projected revenue for the year of 2021 is 660,000, and year to date, this is as of today, Julie, right? That you printed this for me? Yes. We are at 685,646. So we surpassed that amount even despite COVID, an additional 25,000. And again, we're only at 70% of the fiscal year. So I do plan on seeing a larger increase on that.
Melissa,
Yes,
could you repeat that again, please?
yes. So the
600,
the
just the number, please.
for the projected for the year,
Right, you said that so far you.
Year to date.
year to date, 646.96.
Thank you.
And on the operating summary, you'll notice that one of the significant changes that I have there is in the salaries. And that's mainly to increase a part, currently we have a part-time senior clerk there, and I'm requesting a full-time senior clerk there that's been there in the past. And I do have many reasons as to why I feel that we should do that. Currently, the amount of work that we have, it's been pretty difficult for the part-time clerk to keep up with the amount of transactions that we have. As you can see, even during COVID, we have still been making our revenue. This is, and as you know, a revenue generating account. And some of the issues that we've been having is there's just not enough time in the day for the clerk. And I pretty much think that we're almost setting them up to fail. It's not enough time for them to actually process all of the documents, index the amount of documents, scan all the documents, and even be able to wait on the people on the counter. Majority of the day, even for instance, for today, we were down one person who was sick. And we had a line, and I'm out here most of the time, as well as the deputy clerk. I do not take lunches most of the times, and I'm here until about 7, 8 o'clock every night, which I'm happy to do when I'm catching up. But it's mainly based because of the insufficient staff that we have in our clerk's department. There is more than enough work that needs to be done. A couple of the other things that we need the increase for is even to accommodate when somebody is out on vacation time. I have 5 people in that office, so I have to give people time off. And right now during the day, if one person is out and I don't have a daytime person, I'm limited to what needs to be done in the office, and as well taking customers at the counter. And I know that we need to be conservative with our funds, especially in the year of COVID. But I also don't think that should be a cost to the residents and providing them services that they expect and have always had and need. So I am requesting that the council bring that position back up to a full-time position to accommodate the actual work that we produce in that office. One of the other issues too is that during the day, my other staff members are taking land evidence recordings in the meantime, but that's not their area of expertise. They're either doing municipal court, probate court, those are their focus areas, licensing, board of campuses. When we take them out of their element to process something for the land evidence department, there's more room for error and things not being done correctly. And the majority of our revenue is done through those real estate sales and through the land evidence documents that we take in. So I think that we'd really be doing the town a disservice if we did not have that as a full-time position. That's my 100% honest opinion on that. That's all I have on that for now. If anybody has any questions.
I'm not really clear.
Yeah, I'm
I'm
sorry.
not clear because if you have the people listed under here, and I don't see like a
We're part-time.
TBA or anything like that. Under here. So if I'm looking like, it seems like I guess in his part-time here.
He's the
because
part-time.
Part-time in his other job, right?
Right.
So I'm figuring that the other half of that salary is gonna show up in the other department. But I'm not sure what you're,
So I'm asking to increase Ed Carusi's position to a full-time position.
Where do we see that?
Under the department request, under the salaries line, where it says Ed
Oh,
Carusi
okay.
listed, and you have the department request and then the administrative recommendations, so.
I just got one more question.
Yeah, sure.
And that is, when we talked about the specialties that people have back here in the department, I mean, there've always been people that have had the specialties, but it is also important to make sure that everybody's cross-trained because people are out on vacation and so forth. And you don't want to get so far into people being specialized and you really have to create the work builds up if somebody's out.
Right, and I agree with you, and in that case, the staff that I do have, they are sufficient enough to be able to process certain transactions, but not to the point of complicated transactions, and not only that is, if a transaction comes in, a typical transaction may take about 15 to 18 minutes, it's taking 15 to 18 minutes each transaction from their particular position of making sure that, so for instance, municipal court, if it's a day that municipal court is out during the day because their hours have changed, which is also something that I have to take into account. When probate court is now taking a transaction for land evidence and we don't have somebody in municipal court during the day because they have a night session, and then I have people coming in, there's just not enough staff to keep up with the flow of work. There's more work than I have staff.
Does the work ebb and flow? Is there slower times?
There are moments where there are slow times. The another thing too is now you'll see during emergency voting, it's something else that we've added here. We have also added some online services, but I do want to make a note that, so for instance, residential stickers and parking stickers are now done online, but we're still issuing the same amount of stickers. That the work hasn't changed in that. And the work is actually almost increased. I mean, even during COVID, we have not seen a stop in work, and we're constantly moving and shaking back there.
Has everybody been in or have there been people in quarantine because, and that's impacted your workflow?
In one instance, I had somebody out for 2 weeks.
Other than that, everybody else has been.
Everybody else has been in, and I haven't had people take vacation time yet. And so we're 3 months into the year, and I've had a couple of days off here and there. I haven't had people take weeks off of vacation time off yet, no.
So I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
I know that we think long and hard before we go and add a new person, or it's not really a half a person, we don't go on half a position. Thing. I know that there were changes recently, in town hall, that is open longer now. So that picks up 3 hours, I believe. believe I'm doing it totally too quick, so I think I'm right. So,
Yeah, 2.5 hours.
but that's 2.5 times how many people in your department, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So there's a lot more time there that wasn't there previously, and I know that was through conversations and negotiations and all of that. Can you talk to us about that? And also, a follow-up. I know that the administrator is suggesting that it should be a part-time position, so I wanted to hear a recommendation from you, if you don't mind. But first, if you could talk to the 3, we'll call it 2.5, 3 hours extra per person per week.
Yeah, so yes, there is an additional 2.5 hours during the week, which we use for just processing our regular work, but everything that we do here as well, it doesn't even include any special projects. So any special projects that I want to plan for the department, I don't necessarily have the space for in time wise and the staff for in time wise. And some of those projects aren't anything crazy. It's in records retention that we have to catch up on. It's just, there's been as I said, a lot of work to be done, increase in work coming in. And to those 2.5 hours that people use, hang on, I gotta step back for 1 second. Even if, one of the things I would say is that even if that position wasn't 40 hours, if I can get 38 hours, 20 hours is just not enough for that position. It's just not. And if somebody wants to sit here with me and watch the work that we do and how many people come in and when people come in. And another thing too is we've lost our telephone receptionist. So those calls are now coming into the majority that comes into the office because we do so much there and we handle so much there. So a lot of those calls come into that office. It hasn't been decreasing or stopping at all. So
Maybe that's something that needs to be addressed more so than like a full-time position, maybe putting back, especially at peak hours, an actual receptionist to, people that come in and see what we're gonna say and push whatever button they think is the right one, if you're gonna make a system. So maybe that's something to look at we should maybe come back to when we, or discuss when we get to the town hall complex, because that may be one way to address it. But if you don't mind me asking, you worked in that department for many years. Is that land evidence position always been a part-time position?
no, it's only been a part-time since last fiscal year. Prior to that, it was always a full-time position. So there's always been a full staff of 5 people there to do the work. Last year was the first year that we went down to part-time position.
Is that because there was a vacancy? Like that somebody had left, retired, and moved to another department? I don't believe that we would have cut that position.
No, that was Steve, I think. That was a recommendation of the previous clerk. He looked at the workload. This was last budget process, and he recommended a part-time position. And a lot of that, you're absolutely right, had to do with the increased hours in the department. So, yeah, it was just based on the department head's request last year that it go part-time. And we presented that to the union. We met with the union several times. And that's where we ended up.
Steve, wouldn't it have been where it must have been a vacancy, but we didn't cut somebody or they didn't want to. I mean, it must have been that there must have been an opening because people had moved around to different departments. And,
Yes.
Yeah.
and is that what happened?
Yes.
So that's why he would have recommended that he probably needed a full-time person because it was functioning for some amount of time without anybody there. Is that it?
I believe so. Yeah, all I know is the request from the department head was, I don't need all the hours in the department, we're doing fine. So we took them up on it.
Is there opportunity? I'm sorry, go ahead. I asked a couple of questions. I want to make sure everybody's got a fair share.
So just so I can understand the increased workload, is there any way that you could say that when the previous clerk had land evidence, there was X number of records being demanded from you guys, but now there has been a 80% increase over that term? Just, is there any way to, is there any
Great
tracking?
question.
Are there also like the phone calls coming in, like, are we tracking those? You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to make more.
No. I was
I'm
gonna say,
just
I don't
saying
even have
from-
enough time
you
to
have to
track
understand-
phone calls, to be
I know.
honest, but it's something that I can do going forward, but the transactions over the years from 18, 19, and 20 have been basically 400 transactions per month. The amount of transactions in the past 5 years haven't changed. It's still a significant amount of work that needs to be done there. And even coming into the office, I've worked in that department for 13 years. There is probably, it doesn't give enough time for that position to index, which is a part of the process where we verify the work that's been done in prior, and the tax assessor has brought over a lot of lists of errors that have been found. And it's basically because we're not giving the person enough time to actually do their work, giving them half a day to do a full-time job. It's just, it's not keeping up with the flow of work in that department at all.
And are there any training gaps or process problems that need to also just be during the need to be worked out as well? Is that, it's like, I don't know, build in more like money for training to get people, or is that not the case?
So one of the other issues to it is that having a limited staff doesn't give me the opportunity to give them more developmental training as well, because then now we're taking people out to train them, and now I'm even short even more people there. So it does also affect their development and learning and training there, for sure. And I know that our new part-time position, he's only been here for a couple of months, but he has caught on really quickly. And many of you know him, he works really hard, he's very diligent. But even prior to this part-time position, the person who was in that part-time position prior to that also had issues keeping up with the workflow. There's just a lot of work, and there's just not enough time in the day to do it. And to also wait on the customers that come in.
It's almost like taking off the mask, is like.
Is that? Helps focus.
Yeah, this is Aaron Lyon.
Very
And Melissa, do you get the sense at all, or do you get the sense at all that that there's any chance that revenues are being lost because we're not keeping up with the workflow or anything like that?
So I do know that in the beginning of COVID, and I was not in the office, so I just want to make that clear, but there were issues where at one point the land evidence was only being allowed between the hours of 12 o'clock to 3:45 to accommodate that people who would come in and do land evidence recordings would only come in at the time of that part-time position. I don't believe that we should be limiting people as to the time that they come in to do land recordings, because attorneys have jobs that they need to do. There are people that have places to be, and I don't believe that limiting people to do that work between the hours of when that part-time person is here, when it's never been that way. In all the years that I've been here, and even prior to me being here, that would restrict the time that somebody can do a particular type of business. So I allow it to be here all day, and I've been fortunate enough that the staff has been able to help out and make sure that that is done. But it's not a good way to run that department at all. It's just not.
Is there any software that would improve land evidence that would
We-
lighten the load and speed things up as far as?
It's manual work, so when somebody comes in to do a recording, you just have to sit there, enter in the information and scan it and index it. There's not really a program other than that would do that. I am looking into e-recording, however, even with the e-recording, when somebody processes that online, there's still the back office work that still needs to be done. So somebody still needs to go in and make sure that it's entered in correctly. They still need to make sure that it's uploaded into the system correctly. It doesn't eliminate that amount of work. It's just an added way for somebody to do business within the town. We're adding services so it's easier for people to do work with the town, but it doesn't actually take away the amount of work that we have.
Are you able to pay, when you get like really busy or trying to just ask people to work, for pay overtime or whatever?
I have a couple of times. I've had to.
Would that solve the problem if there was a certain amount of money in there for just overtime? I don't know, small amount, 5,000, 10,000, like that.
Even if I do ask people to work overtime and after hours, it doesn't help me with people at the counter. So at 4 o'clock we're closing, and somebody's staying overtime an hour and a half to finish doing their work, it doesn't help the other staff with, or alleviate some of the people that they're assisting at the counter. So there are a lot of people that come in for birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates. We have the Department of Health does this online birth record request. Prior to that, we were only issuing birth records from the town of Bristol, or if the parents lived in the town of Bristol. Now it's statewide, anything from 1960 to current. So that also increased the amount of birth certificates that we're able to produce. They're also going to be allowing marriage licensing on that website, marriage license copies on that website, and death certificates on that website. So it's only going to increase. I don't project that the amount of work is actually going to go down.
So what are you saying for birth certificates, you don't have to go to the city hall, but in the past, depends on the province, for example. Are you saying it can be, anybody can come to any town hall and get their birth certificate?
From
documented
1960 to
somewhere?
current. Anybody, anywhere in the state of Rhode Island.
Tony? I'm not Tony, but go ahead.
I'm Tony. Did I hear correctly? I know the schedule had to be modified at some point, okay, and so many people, wow, for an X number of hours, but most recent, is everyone back in?
Yes,
So everybody has back in.
everybody's in. I had somebody out for 2 weeks currently, but since I've been here, the majority of my staff has been here besides. No, yeah, because Melanie prior to that was part-time and then she shifted. So there may have been a week or two in transitioning of positions, but not something that would have been like a month or two or anything on it, no.
Right. I mean, I don't want to jump back on the wagon of the multitasking and cross-training, but I mean, I know that you folks have always been, supportive of each other and fill in when somebody's at lunch, so the thing. And obviously with the extra time, still finding that there is not enough time to
I do.
to
And then,
keep up.
and the other thing too
When
is,
you're looking at 12.5 hours extra per week.
It's
Yeah.
50 hours a month, which is pretty significant. I mean, that's a huge number. And I know everybody that's here, they do a great job. Really, they really do a great job. So it's not my not believing in them and not seeing what they do firsthand. I think you can hear from the concern, and this may be one of these things that we can come back to, because I think we've kind of hit it for a little while and talked about it, but I think we're very hesitant anytime adding people, as you know, and you're certainly looking at this as a significant, you're not sending it lightly, but there's the full-time means healthcare and pension, and there's a myriad of big costs, and we try to be, as you do too, as efficient as possible. So I think that's where the concern is, and
I
if,
believe the medical is already being provided to the part-time positions.
and I may be wrong here, but if I understand it correctly, the position that the person that we're talking is a part-time employee in another part of the town,
Right.
which then that position would need to be filled, right? So tell you what, unless there's objection from this council, it doesn't sound like we've gone to a different place that we want to look at this or look at that to make a final decision. Why don't we put this as a question, if everybody's okay with that? And we can come back to that, is that all right? Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry, I asked you, Mr. Administrator, to share your proposal is to keep the part-time position, see the increase kind of as it follows the other employees, generally speaking. But could you speak to your recommendation of the council?
Yeah, my recommendation, I didn't see anything that changed from the previous clerk's recommendation. So I just left the level of funding for the position. Essentially, that is it. I did speak to two of the former clerks that work in that department, so I could educate myself. But again, I'm not the town clerk, so she would know best if she needs the additional hours. Yeah. But I just found it difficult when I had one clerk saying, I don't forget the requests that I need. So.
There's also another
Of course, yeah.
Do you think,
just
do you think some of it is the fact that a lot of people are new here and it's gonna take a little bit of time? You know, they've only been here since like November or December. That it just takes time to really get fully conversant with their job.
That's a good word. Wow.
Well, Melanie has been here for over a year, or will be a year, and she's actually versed in a lot of the different departments. She's worked in land evidence, she's worked as the deputy clerk, and now she's working in licensing and voting, which she actually did an excellent job in the last election, and she worked really, really hard. And a lot of my staff, they pull together when there's a gap, they pull together and they push through to assist. But there is a significant amount of work that still needs to be done. And the increase of hours also means the increase of customers too coming in the morning. So that time period in the morning between 8 and 8:30 was to accommodate the residents who work 8:30 to 9 or 9 to 10. So that time, 2.5 hours, also doesn't mean that it's free time where we're closed and people could actually sit there and get their work ready. It also allows for more customers. The other thing too is when Ed comes in during noon, he's also covering lunches. So it's, I have 1 hour and a half a day with a full staff, and that's from 2:30 to 4 o'clock. That is the only time of day that I have a full staff here. And it's almost impossible to get as much of the stuff done we need to get done. And right now, and I know that Ed is name is no reflection on him because he has been absolutely excellent, but there's quite an amount of work that still needs to be done and caught up on, and the amount of mail that we receive. And a lot of the transactions, because of the banks have been closed or people have been staying home due to COVID, get a ton of mail per day that position the next day is trying to catch up on. So there is a lot of work to be done in that office. And historically, those have always been full-time positions in that department. And it was because there was a need for the amount of work that we have done. And over the years, we've never decreased the amount of work that we've done. We've always increased it. So I don't see the work decreasing in that position. And I'm all about efficiencies and technology and trying to bring the system up, but we're also behind a lot of the other towns and what their capabilities are. And Warren has 1 town clerk, 1 deputy clerk, 3 full-time positions, and a part-time floater, and they don't have the amount of population that we have in Bristol. Fort Smith also has a town clerk, a deputy clerk, and 3 full-time clerks, also not the same population that we have. I think they're just a little over 16,000, between 16 and 17,000. We're at 21,000 residents. So it's not, I'm not asking for anything that we've never had before. I'm not asking for what other towns don't have. I'm just asking that we actually have the position to be able to accommodate the amount of work that we actually have coming in there. And again, it is a revenue producing account. And if we're compromising the amount of services that we're giving to the residents, I mean, I just don't think if we're generating money from there.
I think it's fair to say, and I think we've covered, but that revenue would happen regardless. It's not about obviously we all care about how well we take care of our residents, but it's not, if we had 3 extra people, we would have X amount more revenue. That's not how it works. That the amount that comes in is the amount that comes in. That's not controlled by the amount of staff. But I think I got this down for a question. I think we've covered it for this evening. We want to come back to this, and this would be more of a, as we progress through the budget, Thursday most likely, but potentially earlier depending on our progress as we make it through. So I know we all probably gonna do some more research. All of us, one of us, or whoever may reach out to you and ask you some more questions on it. So, but it's absolutely, we'll take the next step. Everybody okay with that?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, so besides what we just spoke about in the clerk's department, any other questions for the clerk? Okay, so I'm gonna put a check mark next to that with, and I just wrote down that one question. Stop me, everyone, is that I've got that question. I have a note to make sure that we ask the Fourth of July committee to weigh in tomorrow, just in case if they'd like to add some extra info. There was something else. Julie.
Well, just real quick, the 4th of July committee is scheduled for 6:45 on Wednesday, March 17th, so maybe that's when they're planning to tune in.
Look at that, I want.
And
I
then
want one extra, so for clarity, thank you, Julie, for saying that. Right there, okay, so I'll put a note there again to ask, what's the committee that we spoke about it tonight and ask if they wanted to add anything extra to it, and obviously we'll allow them to do their thing as they always do, because they're important.
And the last item you had was to revisit the contingency in the town administrator budget.
Thank you, I knew there was, all right. Admin contingency. Anything else coming to mind? We're not done yet. I just,
For the last night. That's part of the latest.
so I will put that down with the 4th of July. Is everybody all right with that? All right.
And the tourism thing is separate, right? I think we were just gonna get together on
We
Saturday.
just, yeah, we said we were gonna do that afterwards.
Yep.
So, last night, I just wrote that next to the 4th of July. Okay. All right, so back to budget conversations. Nice job, everybody, so far. We're kind of going through this. Julie, what are the easier 2 lifts of the 4? We've got, I'm sorry, of the 3. Well, actually, how about if we just go to town hall complex? Everybody okay with that? 504, 504? All right, so we're going to town hall complex 504.
The biggest changes you will see in the town hall complex budget are the IT and related line items, which Chris Vitale is very well versed on, and he can share with you some of the changes to the budget this year. You want to start there?
Let's do that.
Address that first? Okay.
I'm gonna come over to the table because I have my sheets of paper here and
Maybe you can get the IT guy to turn the laptop.
yeah. Who's that guy?
You can take your mask off first. While you're.
Oh, there. Thanks. It gets all under there. Good surprise. So just a couple things under the town hall complex. First, with regards to the website and maintenance budget. As you can see this year, we budgeted for significantly less, I think by half if I recall. So last August, I pushed out a new town website. So before we were with the Civic Plus platform, we self-host and maintain our website at this point. So everything you see here is just the either annual or monthly costs that go into that. And then I did put a small contingency in there. With that, as the renewals come up for our existing subscriptions, sometimes they add on an extra fee of, $5-10. And so, I just wanted to be able to account for those changes because those renewals happen periodically throughout the year because some of these are add-on features to the website to give it more functionality. So with that line item, it comes just under 5,000. And then with regards to the overall technology budget, so a couple of differences this year were, since we brought on Freedom Tech, we've continually worked with our departments to just try and refine it and really present the information to the council. Really the best way possible to see how the fees are broken out, where they're allocated to. And I know this year, just I guess a couple of the high level changes is one, over the past year, we have more devices. So when we closed town hall or people had to work from home for whatever reason, town hall staff and other departments had their own laptop to work from. So we set them up with VPN access to go in. There was the one-time cost to purchase the device, but now because we have antivirus, we have, our IT team who's monitoring it, that's an additional fee going forward. So we're watching that closely. And I know that if for whatever reason they're turned in and not being used, we take them off of support so that we're saving saving funds if they're just sitting there waiting to be checked out. The other piece of it is software and licenses. So under here, you'll see that there are new expenses this year for the Zoom licensing. So that's both the individual licenses for our department heads, as well as the webinar and Zoom room, which is here to support the council chambers for your meetings. Most of the time, yeah. I figured out the issue tonight, so hopefully tomorrow will be better, but other fees in here, software and licensing, so I think the biggest dollar amount in here is the Office 365 licensing. The one thing that Freedom Tech wanted me to point out was this was a 3-year contract that was signed, and they hope that next year, when we're no longer getting our licenses through Dell, they think they can save us significant dollar amounts there. So I'm going to watch that as we go into the next year with regards to our licensing efforts. And then I think the last two things with regards to the technology budget is the town's never had a technology replacement plan for some of our computers here at Town Hall. So some of them are running all the way back from like 2008. We have Windows 7 devices, which I believe last year I said, and I mentioned that those were end of life. I think there's a couple Windows Vista devices still somewhere here in town. So it's definitely something that we really want to try and get a replacement cycle established so that, number one, our systems are compromised so that, when we're talking about workload and we're talking about productivity, our computers aren't freezing, they're not crashing, there's enough memory. And some of these older computers that we've been able to repurpose to date, they weren't necessarily built for the latest Windows version. So long-term, I think it's a good practice to get into a replacement plan. And then as part of that, you'll also note there's a couple iPads in here. One that was a request of the building department with the goal of having all the inspectors having iPads out during inspection. The other one would be for the harbor department. So as Greg mentioned earlier, the fuel docks that he's looking to do this summer, he wants to have an iPad there for purchasing. And that's it for me. The one other thing I want to mention in regards to this budget too was long-term. One of my goals for this year would be to work with the other departments to come up with a IT and communication strategic plan so that the priorities of the town with regards to technology is in one place and that we're thinking about technology collaboratively among the different departments going forward. So that's all things not necessarily in this budget, but things that I'd be looking to work on over the next year.
We're all cloud-based. Our databases, everything going to the cloud?
Yes, so that was something that they did in their first year. So we have been working over the past year to get all of our other facilities, Parks and Recreation, the Harbor Department, connected to Town Hall securely because we back up data on the Town Hall server. So all of our external sites, they tunnel back here to Town Hall, and then that backs up daily. But our IT company said for more secure systems, such as our tax assessment or finance, they can back that up hourly or twice a day, really just whatever the need is. So yes, the short answer is yes, it is being backed up. Yes, so I'm very pleased over the past 2 years since Freedom Tech came on. The goal at this point was to stabilize the town's IT infrastructure, get it up to date. And so really this budget and going forward, it's going to be about the long-term planning. So, I think even up until this past year, we were still getting surprise bills for things that were signed up for in some account somewhere by the predecessor IT company. And so I think now they have a very good lay of the land, and I do think we're going to be in a good place going forward. So again, I think as we continue to work with departments and find efficiencies, my hope is that these lines will go down as we renegotiate contracts and such.
Chris, are we still maintaining service at the rec department? And you still have those as backups?
Yes, so that's connected back to town hall as well.
Anybody else for Chris? Thanks, Chris.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I guess I'm open to any questions. There are some obvious increases.
Why don't you just speak to those high-level increases and we'll focus on those.
We have building maintenance, is one you can see, it's about a $15,000 increase. We've just done a whole lot of improvements in the last few years, and we seem to have trouble getting all of the work done with the budget that we had in place. So we are looking for an increase that will more accurately reflect what the needs are for the buildings.
Town hall complex for everyone's recollection includes.
Town hall complex includes 9 Court Street, 10 Court Street, the school buildings up on the Common, and Burnside Road.
Thank you.
This is,
So the school is moving out all of it. That would come back to us, just like a Viking or so. You know, I'm assuming, but I just wanted to ask you guys.
Yeah.
let's see, stick to that one.
You got it.
It's as easy as that.
Sometimes it's that
So
easy.
you're not building.
Which one are we talking about? I'm sorry.
I mean, rental.
Reynolds, that currently Reynolds is in the possession of the school. Currently. You agree with that, Mr. Administrator? Okay, thank you. Julie?
So the increase that you see, the other, I guess, larger increases in the telephone and internet area, and that's just again a budget adjustment to reflect the actual costs of the telephone and internet for the whole, for the complex. So. Is there anything else you'd like?
Anything
me
of
to
significance?
discuss?
I'll tell you what, I'll open right up for questions. Council?
I think that's Julie in our administrator to take a look at the receptionist issue. I mean, it's not a ton of money, but how much money is being spent by departments and not having people there? So if you just picking a number because you don't really know who to talk to, or you just don't want to go through the whole litany of, press this number for this one. And you pick one and it happens to be the clerk's office or whoever, I don't know which one is first. That's spending a lot of time. People come into the building and wander around looking for someone that can help them as opposed to somebody right there. So I would really ask you to revisit that for the, for this budget, that we put that as a question, whether it's all of you that we used to have in the past or part-time during really busy parts of the day. That would help alleviate that because, sometimes to save a small amount of money, we're ending up spending more in people's time and effort and not getting the work that needs to get done. So I'm serious, we think that we need to revisit that. I know it's very frustrating to try to get food anybody when you have, sort of an endless maze of,
Phone tree?
yes.
So I'm gonna put that down. Everybody okay with that put that down as a question we can review? Okay. So part-time reception. What else? Okay, I don't hear anything else. Give everybody an extra moment. No? Okay. So that's it for town hall complex. And obviously I wrote down that question. So we have, I'll tell you what, it's 9:45. We've been here since 6:30. Why don't, Julie, I'm gonna defer to you and say, of the 3 that are you, finance, debt service, and fixed charges, of those 3, which one's the least painful?
I think the finance, probably,
I think so too.
Yeah.
Everybody all right with that?
finance.
I mean, I'll keep going. I don't know if you guys want to go to 11 o'clock.
We lost an hour.
We'll give you all night.
We lost an hour Sunday.
Do it all night.
You guys are troopers, man. I love it. Okay, all right. 5:01, everybody. 5:01. I'm just making sure. I want to give everybody an exit strategy. If it- Okay. Honestly, whatever we do now means shorter afterwards and less that we'll have to worry about and gives us more time to have more discussion on issues. So, okay. 5:01, Julie, finance.
Well, we have the salaries just reflect the current staff positions. We've got, let's see, IT and support had a little uptick. That was, we have our finance department software annual costs. This covers our payroll and accounting. We are currently looking at some payroll, accounting software conversion options. We've done a couple of demos with different companies. One that seems very affordable and promising. So I'm hoping they'll be on one of the purchasing cooperatives and perhaps we can save some time.
Do we see that here?
So no, I'm sorry, that's in under capital, but it's finance and IT related, so it could potentially impact this line, but not reflecting it.
Thank you.
Revaluation costs is the town share of the statistical revaluation that's coming up,
When does that do?
and that will be for 12/31/2021.
Easy, how fast that happens, isn't
So other than that, I'm open for questions.
it? Questions for Julie? All right. It's pretty straightforward, and you know what? We're gonna stop every once in a while and say this. This council appreciates the straightforward budgets that we're getting and the information that comes along with them so we can make it. So, thank you all. Oh, we're next, we're going to 5:02, so everybody seemed absolutely on board. Damn the torpedoes. 5:02, Julie.
Our debt service did increase quite a bit, but it was all planned. We
All right,
have
so
a debt
I'm sorry,
service.
1 moment. So 5:02, debt service. All right, go ahead.
So we did have some increases in debt service, about $260,000. But this is planned. We have a lot of really good infrastructure projects going on. There's been a lot of good work done on the roads. We've got our marina expansion, which will return us revenues. We have, let's see, we've done some open space purchases. So we can, I don't know how much detail you want to get into on this, but it's all projects that we've discussed. You'll notice in the supporting documentation, you'll see the payment schedule, so you can actually see what we're paying on all of these bonds and what we've estimated for the upcoming debt service for both general fund and the enterprise fund, although that's not discussed tonight. And then we have a 10-year schedule so that we can try and handle our future issuances in a way that won't cripple us from a budget perspective. So if that was putting off a principal payment or doing something creative in the way that we're issuing bonds, that's what we try.
And we've refunded more than our,
Yes.
more than a few. I wouldn't say our fair
Anytime,
share, but
yeah,
we'll take
we have-
every time.
We have very good fiscal advisors and they are always watching for us. And if they see that there's some potential savings out there, they're sure to let us know right away that there's an opportunity for savings. So we haven't done some good savings on these.
So we're all aware of why we bought it, why we borrowed and what it was for, but let's open it up for questions. What do we want to know what do we want to know from Julie?
Yeah, I just had a question. We talked about the roads.
Yes.
And that.
Good. So there's not detail there. You'll see the more on the projects. If you look at the 5-year capital plan, that's where you'll really get a better handle on what the projects are that we're working on, as well as how we're funding them. So if we're issuing bonds for them, you'll see in that 5-year capital plan that we're issuing bonds for roads, we're issuing bonds for the marina. And so that's a nice document for to guide you through all these projects. In fact, that's why we came up with the document, because the town's so active in all these projects that it's hard to keep track of them all and the priorities.
Capital, we typically have a special meeting for our capital typically around now, if my memory is correct, right?
So typically, we have the 5-year
Five-year?
plan as a workshop about a couple of months before the budget, but with the
The weirdness that
schedule
is.
and the audit and everything else, we decided to include it as supporting documentation for the capital line of the budget this year. And you'll notice that the capital recommendation by the administrator agrees to the amount of capital shown on the year one capital project, so we can discuss that.
Okay. No, it's not a complaint, it's more about, it's
A
so
little bit of
important.
different process, and we can think, I mean, if you wanna
Well, it's
think
important
about how you'd like
for,
to do it going forward, if you like having that separate night, or if you
I
like it
do.
as supporting.
I think it's important because it talks about the bigger things that we're focused on, and it makes sure that it doesn't, because this is a lot of information this evening. And encompassing it with everything else, I think it gets lost, so I would like to, on a go-forward basis, make sure that we do our yearly. And we can go through, we can hit that, we don't have to do it right now, but we can certainly go through those things. I know we're on track, but I think it's important to state those.
And it provides a nice status update report as well, so
Yes.
you can see all the things you talked about last year and where you want.
Yeah, talk about progress, absolutely. All right, what questions for Julie so far? And I wanted to push this off crazy. Okay, so next is fixed charges. That would be 503. This is your show and it continues to be. Julie.
Okay. So fixed charges, the retiree medical and dental just reflects those increases we discussed earlier in the evening on the insurance lines. Our life insurance policies, I believe last year, this may have included the sewer fund, probably just because Raquel wouldn't have had the intimate knowledge that I do, so I was able to reduce that a little bit this year, which is nice. Post-employment benefits, that you hear often as OPEB. That is our kind of good news story in this budget, and this is the first year that we are able to not only not contribute to our OPEB trust, but we're actually going to draw funds out of the trust to help offset the cost of the retiree medical and dental. So the post-employment benefits are those benefits to the retirees, everything except for pension. And this is, the whole point of setting up the trust back when, John Day, my predecessor, did this in 2006, I think, 2007. And so those funds, we've just been contributing, and the council has been really great about approving those contributions every year. So the funding levels are at a really healthy place, and the actuaries have advised that we can start taking withdrawals. So that is, so you'll see actually a revenue in this budget of $300,000.
Very unusual.
That's very unusual.
This
yes.
council asked this at our last council meeting. I forgot who asked in particular. We asked where we were with that and the. It was part of the audit, right? And the auditor said to us that you are excellent. To the point where, I guess Julie just spoke to us. That's outstanding. Nice job, everybody.
And the unemployment, insurance, our insurance lines, there was no real big news there. They just reflect the current policies, the premiums that we're expecting. The unemployment, we thought we could take down a little bit this year as a way of just eking out some savings. We don't anticipate, hopefully anticipate any unemployment costs, very little. And same severance pay has a pretty healthy balance right now. We'll continue to watch that. We may want to increase that a little bit next year, depending on what retirements we have, but we really could come up with a whole lot of retirements. So I think that we're safe to get some savings out of that line this year. And then our 27 pay period is that every 11th or 12th year, we have 27 pay periods instead of 26. So we save a little bit every year to help soften the blow when that happens.
Questions? Don't.
No.
Go ahead.
See, this is the part that we missed, right? I'm just like,
Okay, so, and I don't think you necessarily need to be part of the make a difference in the budget per se, but we did say we were going to revisit that issue of the administrator and the clerk and the severance packages. I thought we talked about doing that for budget time. I don't know if we want to, or if we want to set another time to do that.
I think we should, and just to, it's funny that you asked that. I did reach out to the solicitor today about a couple of things, including that. And I think we can put that into our April meeting, and we can do executive sessions initially, so we can have comfortable conversation, and it's appropriate because it's personnel, right? And comfortable conversations with Melissa, right? And do that offline and then come back. Obviously, that is ultimately done in public. But the rationale behind it, and please counsel if you disagree, we can certainly do this now, is that because the dollars that we're talking about are salary dollars, and we'd be talking about additional things like vacation time and all of that, it's not going to change our budget. So that was the justification for, we have so much going on this month. I thought it was such an important topic that moving it to a time where we were clear-headed and it didn't negatively or positively. So is everybody okay with that?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up. because
Yeah.
they talked about that. No, I don't need to.
It was funny that- Yeah, so the timing was, yeah, I thought that's how we could handle it, and that way we can have comfortable conversation, open dialogue, and then ultimately. What else? That's out of stuff. Something else?
No, I don't, that was you.
Okay. Now, Julie, just a quick question on the severance, well, the salary reserve, let me go to that.
Okay.
Is that encumbered into a fund?
It's a transfer every year into a separate fund, yes. So if you look in the back of your audit book, all those funds were listed. Actually, this one won't be there because it's an assigned fund. The council has committed those funds internally.
Okay, and likewise, that'll be true with the severance.
Correct, same thing.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
What else? Ladies and gentlemen, we just went through everything that we said we would. Outstanding job. So let's review before we go. We have four questions, sorry. Town clerk, part-time, full-time, town administrator contingency, last night conversation with 4th of July committee, and then part-time receptions. That was the latter, most recent question that came up. Did I miss anything? Okay, so tomorrow evening, we'll be here again. Of course, it's 6:30. And you'll notice on tomorrow's agenda, Tuesday, March 16th, that we've gone through a lot of it already. And the way advertising works, we can only go through what is shown on advertised agenda, right? So tomorrow's meeting should be significantly shorter, or maybe not, who knows? But there's less items, how's that? Yeah.
So are we able to? You can't add anything, you can't do the capital improvement, so go over that. If we have time like tomorrow, Wednesday, can we? Well, Wednesday, you can add it to the, it's still 48 hours. Isn't it?
So it's a great question. So you're asking if we could add if we have time, add the capital conversation on Wednesday or Thursday?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like you've done like a lot of these. But tomorrow, like municipal observances are done, and everything else underneath that. And then on Thursday and Wednesday, what canvassers, you know, Fourth of July, fire, that's already.
It's actually, it's
Human services.
Well,
Wednesday.
human services is on Thursday.
Yeah.
And our past practice, I don't know why we would change on that. We, instead of having each person or each entity present, we've gone a different direction and said, in the least, and this council can do whatever it wants. If we want to do something other than that, of course we can. But we've gone to a place where unless there's a difference, or if you haven't presented it to us in the past, honestly, we know a lot of these entities quite well, and we're comfortable or not comfortable, whatever the case may be, comfortable.
Do they know that? Do they know that they don't have to come? And sometimes if people don't show up, if people, I mean, in other forums, it's like a strike against them. If people know they don't have to show up.
I'll tell you what, I'm actually gonna put the administrator on the spot for a moment and say, when we request or send out the the grant request, that's what this would be, right, to these entities. I don't know what we've shared with them. I know in the past we have and said that, no, you don't need to. No, we don't need you to be here. It won't be negatively thought of. Obviously, we have Zoom, so people can zoom in and do that. But again, it's up to this council. We don't need to, we can hear or not hear. If we have a question on something in particular, certainly we can ask, so.
Well, I think it would be good if they were just tuned in on Zoom, they were, you could speak on that.
I agree. So I will tell you what, I will touch base with the administrator and the administrators through him, the assistant, because I know that Carol sends out the invitations and all that. We can get some clarity on that and make sure. All right, so
it sounds like you're interested in having them at least invited.
Just invited.
invited, so on Zoom, right? And then there, if questions or if there's something in particular they need to share, And then Mary had brought up about Wednesday about potentially having conversation in regards to capital. And I don't know, honestly, maybe you do, Melissa, the answer to that one.
Give me 48 hours notice, because if it was at 6:30 and it's Sunday night, I would have had to post it by 6:30.
I guess the question is it part of, would it be considered, I'm putting quotes in the air here, part of our budget as part of our larger conversation? I'll tell you what, I think you're 100% spot on. I'll reach out to the solicitor tomorrow morning and get some clarity on that.
Maybe
Because it
we
would
could
feel like
add
it'd
it.
be part of it.
I was wondering if you could add it like we do, but not have, and have, when we go over what's there, not have like extensive discussion. We could ask them that.
We're not voting on it, there was no action.
Right,
It's
there's no
just a
action.
discussion.
Right.
Could a vote be made that we would like to add for discussion only?
I think it's fair to say that it's a substantive part of all of this. I think it's included in so much of it, but
I think it's also often discussed in the administrator's overview, and so I don't know if you could continue, if it, maybe you
well, we haven't
continue the
closed
administrator's-
anything.
Oh.
We've just said we've called it. Any questions on this one? So I'll tell you what, I think I know what we need to do. I'll reach out to the solicitor and I'll get us clarity tomorrow before the meeting, so you know what you're walking into. So besides those 4 questions, anything else? Anything else before we go? I have something for all of us. Thank you, Mr. Administrator, Treasurer, Clerk, but particularly the Treasurer and the Administrator for an excellent, so far, what's being presented, because obviously the work comes before the primarily. Thank you. It's most appreciated. Motion to adjourn? All in favor? Any opposed? Thanks, everyone.